Hi, I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker. Ken Suri has been a friend of mine for quite some time. I'm so impressed with everything that he does. And today we're going to be talking about raising a child on the spectrum, one dad's journey. So thank you so much for being here today, Ken.
Sure. No, thank you, Kristen, for inviting me.
Well, I love the fact that, one, that you're a dad and there's so many dads out there that are either scared, they're not participating as much as we wish they would. But
Yeah.
not only you are a dad participating, you're a single dad raising your child. And I don't think we see many of you out there. And for those watching, that if you are doing that, awesome. I wish you had more support. But I've been on this journey for, gosh, going on 14 years. And I've met a lot of families, and very rare do I find a dad single raising a child and
Yeah.
doing just such an amazing job how you are. So I just think this interview is going to be so great. I really think it's going to be helpful and inspiring. So again, I guess we'll just dive right in. Let's talk
Okay.
about your son, Alex.
Sure.
Let's first give a background of, yeah, you're a single dad, and you have a child named Alex, who I love. I just think
Yeah.
he's awesome. But
Yeah.
let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about where you started from and how this all kind of began with your background, because I know this isn't what you set out to do.
Yeah. It's definitely not my plan. I usually say, if I'm speaking to parents, in particular dads, one of the reasons why dads, I think, have a more of a challenge dealing with the diagnosis and then the initial part of raising a child on the spectrum is because dads always have like a plan. And when things go off the plan, they kind of have difficulty dealing with it. So, my plan was I was going to graduate school in Washington, D.C. I was going to move back up to New York, and I was going to continue a Wall Street career. So that got derailed in that when Alex, first of all, I got divorced and split up, and Alex was developing normally until the age of 3. And at the time, his mom and I had split up. I had actually moved back up to New York, and I was doing sort of the Wall Street thing. And Alex was living with mom most of the time. We had joint custody down in Northern Virginia, and I was picking him up on the weekends and on holidays. So I was doing like a ridiculous amount of driving up and down like I-95. And he, at the age of 3, his birthday's in June, and he's 19 right now. At the age of 3, he was still able to count. I always say this: he was able to count to 10 in English, Spanish, and Japanese. On 9/11 in New York, he was watching like TV coverage, and he's like, "Turn that off. That's scary."
Wow.
And then by the end of that year, by the end of 2001, he was nonverbal. And his mom and I were trying to figure out what was going on. We were bringing him to various pediatricians down in Virginia, in the DC area. Eventually, we got referred to Johns Hopkins, and then we heard this term autism, which I had never heard before. And I didn't know what it was. But, in my guy way, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to figure this out and take care of it. So several years later, I wound up taking full custody of Alex and moving him up to live with me in Manhattan full time. And now it's been 10 years that he's up with me together. So, my original plan was I was going to have a family, finish graduate school, and work in New York. And I am in New York, at least, but the rest of it kind of didn't work out, So I'm not married. I have a great son, but he's on the spectrum, and he's nonverbal. So that's not what I signed up for, and I'm pretty sure anyone listening to this did not sign up for that kind of challenge, right?
Yeah, it wasn't the
Yeah,
picture you painted. I talk about this in my lectures. It's like
yeah,
we have this Etch-a-Sketch, and it's like we have to constantly shake up the Etch-a-Sketch because what we
yeah,
thought it was going to be is not.
yeah,
And even daily, you have different challenges. And I mean, one, the fact that you're in New York,
yeah,
and that's like really, and you're in Manhattan of all places,
yeah,
and you're doing this, I mean, always blows me away,
yeah,
and how you're doing it. And so, I don't think a lot of people out there that maybe don't know a lot about autism understand that not every child, quote unquote, is born and then doesn't reach their milestones. Like many of our kids reach their milestones. They were talking.
yeah.
Everything seemed to be what we thought was the American dream, right?
That's right. That's right.
and suddenly this regression happened. And so how are you handling that with Alex, with him the way he is now? And I know he's continuing to thrive, and he definitely hits different milestones now, right?
That's right. That's right.
But as a single parent in New York, how are you doing it?
You know, let me think real quick how to actually say that. You know, one part of it I usually say is it's kind of day by day, like little steps here and there is one component of it. So that's like sort of it's a short-term thing, but you know, you have to make it through the day and do what you need to survive. And then at the same time though, I try to look back, and now it's been 10 years, like I mentioned, I look back like year over year and I can see progress of I see progress in Alex and I see progress in myself. Mm-hmm. So that gives me the motivation to keep working on things, you know, things such as whether it was biomedical treatments, you know, various education strategies, you know, fighting to get him into the right schools. And then also for myself, you know, trying to find a way to make money. I mentioned before, I was an analyst on Wall Street, and being a single parent, I have to get Alex ready in the morning, get him off to school, and then be home when he gets there. And you cannot leave the office at 3 o'clock. Mm-hmm. You can't leave the office at 8 p.m., you know, if you're working on Wall Street. So that didn't work out. And that particular piece I feel better about, because I realized I actually didn't like working on Wall Street. And a little secret, no one actually likes working on Wall Street. They may like the money and the things that it buys, but no one really likes that lifestyle. It's hustle and bustle. It's not really good. Yeah. So for that, I'm kind of thankful. I'm starting to trail off from your original question there, but
the fact that you're, you know, a single parent in New York, you're figuring out ways, you know, you have to be creative as an autism parent. I always say it's, you know, we're constantly mixing up this recipe, trying to figure out, okay, one day this recipe works, and then the next day we made it the same way, but it doesn't work. The cookies don't taste the same, right?
That's right.
Now, as a dad, and I think this is important for dads out there, you know, I know your goal and my goal always is we want families to stay together. You know, if you can have families stay together, that is, and they're happy, or however happy they can be, right? Yeah. That is, to me, the first and foremost goal, right? So for dads out there that, you know, I know there's dads out there that are, you know, but a lot of the moms get put the burden on, and I hate to use the word burden, but it kind of is a burden when none of us went to school for this, right? For the most part. That's right. All of a sudden we're supposed to be the doctor, the nurse, the therapist, the nutritionist, and we're supposed to learn all this stuff. And as a mom, on my end at least, it's like everything was kind of put on my shoulders of, okay, well, you're the nurturer, you're the one that's supposed to take care of the kid, so you're supposed to do this, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky. I definitely have support in the sense of he's there still making sure to help, but it's usually with my guidance, right? Got it. Okay. And so there's dads out there, and I would love to see more dads getting involved. And, you know, I don't know if anything's ever going to be 50-50, but, you know, jumping in and not being afraid, because it's not the traditional role of a dad from what we see from even us growing up, right? Like even on television and stuff, it's a mom and a dad, and the mom is the one that's more nurturing and takes care of everything. Yeah. So how do we encourage dads out there, either if they are single or if they're still in a family unit with a significant other, how do we encourage those fathers to get involved and to stay involved?
Yeah, it's as a single dad, in a way, it's sort of easy because you have no choice. You know, I had no choice. Alex's mom had basically gotten remarried and has since gotten remarried again. And she did not, it's not that she didn't want Alex around. It's that she was not capable of taking care of him at the stage he was at. He was 9 and he was having a lot of behavioral issues. And I think it was just too much for her. Not everyone can do, what we do or what some of the parents here are listening. It's just to back up a little second, again, when I speak to parents a lot, I try to, I always refer to this study that was done by Disability Scoop in 2009, and they compared stress levels. It was actually for parents, autism moms, actually. It was a study of autism moms, and they did a stress test, and they compared the stress test to different professions. And the closest profession was combat soldier. So not just soldier, but actually in combat. So basically the stress level is like you're in combat 24/7. You're on permanent tour of duty, in Afghanistan or something like that. I mean, that's the kind of stress that we are dealing with. And not everyone is cut out for that. But if you sort of embrace it, and usually what I say is we're the Navy SEALs of parents, literally that's why we're doing what we do, because we're the best at it. Mm-hmm. And it's the only thing is that, Navy SEALs volunteer and we kind of got drafted, that was kind of the difference. So as a single parent, I don't think you have a choice. You will either embrace the challenge and work on it and continue to work on it and hopefully thrive, or it will break you. I mean, not to be negative, but I mean, those are your two choices, right? Now as a couple, I'm not a couple, so I don't know that I can fully speak to that. But if I was to advise a dad, and I have talked to dads who are still married and all, I would try to tell them my experience of being, the single dad and all the stuff I have to do. Alex also has ulcerative colitis, which played into his autism, I think, and like the treatment for that helped everything else out, right? So because of the ulcerative colitis, he's had all kinds of medical treatments that I have to sort of be on top of, and that, from a time perspective, requires a lot of work in that I have to make all his meals. I'm cooking for him like 3 times a day. In the morning I get up, I have to make his breakfast because he's on the SCD diet. He can only eat certain things. And so I have to make his breakfast in the morning. At the same time, I'm preparing his lunch for school because he can't eat the school lunch. And when he comes home, I'm making his dinner. I've actually gotten pretty good at it now. So again, that was something else. I didn't think I was going to have to cook. I live in Manhattan, and you can basically order 24/7, 365, any kind of food you want, but I have to cook like 3 times a day. So I order for myself. But I would try to tell the dads like what, it's not the normal situation. What you were kind of laying out there, Kristen, was, the dad goes to work, this is like 1950s America. The dad goes to work. He comes home, he sits down and eats dinner with the family. Maybe he reads the paper or something like that. And then they watch a sitcom or something like that. And that's kind of the story. And, for the guys, maybe that was a good deal. So they don't want to give it up, and they're like, hey, that sounds pretty good to me. That's all I want to know. But, when you have a child who's has a developmental disability, autism, it's all of a sudden the amount of work that it takes to raise that child, it goes through the roof. So to have all that on one person, whether it's mom or dad, most of the time mom, is not fair. And again, it comes back to this guy plan thing. The dad, no one signed up for it, right? But it's just assumed that the mom is going to be the caregiver. So the dad, and if dad's working, he's out of the house all day. So and from the dad's perspective, or for either parent who's out working all day, because I know I do know a couple dads who are actually the stay-at-home dads in the family. Mm-hmm. When mom comes home or dad comes home from work, it's tough to kind of walk into what could be like the grinder of autism if there's like a tough day going on. So, I would try to understand it from their perspective too. I didn't really have, when Alex, I told the story again real quick of how Alex regressed. I had already been separated. So I can't really say that how, I don't know if what I would have done. You know what I mean? If we were still together, I don't know that I would be the same person that I am right now. You might not even want to talk to me. I might be one of these dads who's, working 12 hours a day. And then on the weekend, I'm like, oh, I have to go golf with the guys at the office because that's, we have to do that. It's like office politics. We have to golf. So it was funny because my ex-brother-in-law used to call golf "Go Out, Leave Family." Like that, that was the acronym that golf was on. So I don't know if that's a good answer for the folks out there, Kristen, but that's what I would say. I would try to, if I was the dad, I would want to try to understand my wife's situation, because it's not a normal situation. So if her situation is going to be much more challenged and basically is going to require more work, you know what? I'm probably going to have to do a little bit more too.
And the traditional and normal becomes a whole new definition, like
Yeah.
I just, as you even like picture, as you mentioned, and we kind of pictured the 1950s, life,
Yeah.
I was like, I don't even know what that would be like. Like that would just
Yeah.
blow my mind, and I know there are families out there that have that. And, but I think that we have to make the best normal of whatever that looks like for us. And I think you're a really great example of that. That's why I was excited to talk with you today, because I think that, often the dad's role kind of either it doesn't get highlighted or it kind of gets diminished in the sense of, well, I'm the breadwinner, or I'm this, or I'm that. And yet you're doing it all. And I think for me, that's, I think that's to be commended. And I know we didn't sign up for this. We did choose to have children, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But, being a father or a mother is different than birthing a child or, being a sperm donor.
Yeah.
So you took that role and you took it seriously. So I love that. You mentioned a little bit about his GI issues. How did you come about to learn about that? And what are you doing? You talked a little bit about the STD diet, but what are you doing to kind of help that? Because you said now it's helped the autism part so much more.
Yeah, so Alex is 19 now. When Alex was probably 13, 14, he had an opportunity to go to this summer camp for like 2 weeks in upstate New York. And it's a camp that's kind of well known. It's called Ramapo. They've been having like special needs kids at their camp. It's like 240 acres, like in the Catskill Mountains. It's right near like Rhinebeck, New York. It's a really nice area. They do a lot of, it's like a camp, it's like a camp. That's why they call it a camp. But no, they swim in the lake, they swim in the pool, they go hiking. There's like chickens, horses, zip lines, all that kind of stuff.
Fun.
And and there's like 240 acres. It's a really nice like setting. And, it's like a few $1,000s for this camp. So Alex at one point, he's been to private school in Manhattan and he's been to public school where he is right now. In middle school, he was in a public school. And it was like a block or so from Park Avenue. There happened to be like these couple wealthy, literally older women on Park Avenue that have nothing to do with their money. So all the kids in this site are all like have developmental disabilities. They pay for the whole school to go to summer camp. You can go for the entire summer if you want, or you can just do a week or 2 weeks. They would pay for anyone who wants to go. They can go. So I'm like, we're going. So Alex went for 2 weeks, 2 years in a row. And it was probably, those were like the biggest breaks, just backing up real quick, as a parent that I had as Reverend, because it's 24/7, 365. And like when I first dropped Alex off at the camp the first time, I came back home and I was sitting there and I was shaking. I didn't even know what to do, like, because I had not had, like, there were some days I couldn't make it downstairs to Starbucks. And in Manhattan, like every block, every corner, there's like a Starbucks. I couldn't get a cup of coffee, like on some days. That's how challenging things were. Mm-hmm. But so at the second year of the camp, so he was probably like 14, maybe going on 15. When I went to pick him up, the camp told me, because there's like, you're incommunicado, like during the whole time there. They like, if the kids, you're not supposed to, like if they need to, they can put you on the phone or something like that, but they have loaned devices. They're supposed to be like separated so they can kind of get into the system of the camp and also like not be as homesick. That's the strategy, at least. So, and they're always, he was always upset like the first 2 nights, like he was crying, and they tell you afterwards he was crying. I'm like, oh, great. So, so when I picked him up this second time, apparently a virus had gone around upstate New York, and in particular had hit this area of the camp, and everyone in the camp got sick and, was throwing up and all that stuff like that. The problem was Alex stayed sick the whole rest of the summer. Oh. So when he came home, he had lost a lot of weight up there. He came home, and for like a couple of days, he kind of did not want to get out of bed. Maybe he got out of bed, and the only thing he would eat, and this is really weird and kind of gross, was orange juice and salami. I don't know why. Anything else he would eat, he would not be able to keep down. Like water, He would spit it up. Any fruit, he would spit it up. Orange juice, salami is okay. I don't know what that was about, but that was what he lived on for the better part of 2 months that particular summer. So I started, at first I took him to his, he had a Dan doctor. I don't think they're Dan doctors anymore, but he had one of those guys in New York. We took him to him. He was trying to figure out what was going on. But Alex kept losing weight and he was getting weak. And then I took him to Lenox Hill Hospital, which is a good hospital here in the city. And they referred us to New York Presbyterian, which is one of the top hospitals, right? So we were going through they said, all right, we think it's a GI problem. And by now, Alex had gotten so weak that when he wanted to take a bath, he would be in the bath. I would have to lift him up out of the bathtub because he couldn't climb out of the bathtub.
Wow.
Because literally he would not, one thing I learned from this is I know how long a human can go without eating, because he would not eat for days. And I would try to make him drink some water. He wouldn't drink any water. The only thing he would drink was orange juice. So he was surviving on orange juice. So one morning he woke up, and while he was not feeling well, like I said, we went to Lenox Hill, and then we went a couple times to New York Presbyterian. They were ordering all these kinds of tests, scans or whatever. And we were waiting our turn to take these various tests. One morning while we were, it was probably late at night, actually. Maybe it was 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And he woke up, and one of the things he had developed a couple bits of acne on his face, and then also on his lower leg. And then it started to look really weird. And I think they thought it had something to do with the GI problems. I didn't know what this was at the time, but this one morning I woke up, and we're in a different apartment than I was now, but we kind of had a similar setting where there were 2 beds and stuff like that in the bedroom. And there was a trail of blood from the bedroom into the kitchen. And Alex is in the kitchen drinking orange juice out of the carton. So I gave him a bed, I cleaned up his leg. His leg had what looked like acne on it, bad acne, had kind of expanded and then imploded. And you can see inside of his leg, basically. So it was a mess. It didn't seem to be hurting him that much because he wasn't kind of complaining about it. He was drinking orange juice and stuff like that. He obviously didn't feel good. So I called the emergency number, for the doctors who were already doing some of the tests, and they're all right, yeah, you got to come in now. So we had to go to the emergency room. And we were in the hospital for almost, 2 weeks.
Wow.
There, and we did all the tests. I don't know, the folks may know Dr. Krigsman. I was also talking to Dr. Krigsman at the time, and he was it's probably Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. And if anyone who's been to him, it's really an extensive protocol that you have to follow, all these tests, and it's kind of a lot of money to do all this work to determine if your child has a GI issue. And we got it for free because, Alex was hospitalized, and we did all the tests, and I would send him the information, and so he was doing the diagnosis, and the folks at New York Presbyterian were doing the diagnosis. In the end, they diagnosed him with ulcerative colitis. He had ulcers throughout his entire GI tract, literally from here to down there, right? And they were more prevalent in the lower part of the colon, and I think that's where the ulcerative colitis, that's how they define it as ulcerative colitis. It's pretty much the same thing as Crohn's, but I think it's where the locus is how they choose one or the other diagnosis. Treatment's pretty much the same. But when after they did this, and I was glad that they found something, because I'm all right, now we got something to work on, right? Yeah. So now we know what to do. Ulcerative colitis, I heard that there's stuff you can do. So the doctors, when they looked at the scans, said, this has probably been percolating in his system for about 10 years or so, which would date to about the time of his regression, So it's a pretty clear link that whatever caused his regression also had something to do with his GI tract and thus his immune system. So when he was in the hospital, they immediately started giving him, once they finished the diagnosis, they gave him some steroids. They put him on this infused drug called Remicade, which is used for, it's a heavy duty biologic anti-inflammatory drug used for ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, but it could also be used for rheumatoid arthritis and other really challenging chronic conditions, right? Soon as he had the drugs, in 15 minutes, he started like eating stuff. Like he was ordering food and like eating like bacon and eggs. Like there was no tomorrow. The kitchen wasn't even open. They sent someone down there to make stuff for him. So that started the recovery. And then it was a matter of like, he was on all these like heavy duty drugs. And then over time we were able to get him off all of the drugs, except for there was one drug called Lialda, which is, again, it's an anti-inflammatory drug, and it's used for a lot of conditions, in particular ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, GI issues. And that's the one drug that he's still on now. We were able to get him off the steroids and all the other stuff, partially, I think, because of the diet. So, I had heard about the SCD diet. We were doing gluten, casein free, but I would encourage any parents who are doing like gluten, casein free, and if they're seeing like a result, to probably go on SCD. Like if that's working, you probably need to go all the way and do that. I know it's like challenging to do these things, but that helped. Obviously the treatment in the hospital kind of has put his ulcerative colitis into remission now, because now we're like several years out. He has to get scoped every once in a while. So I'm actually looking forward to his next scope, because I'm hoping that it's really totally sealed up now, like all the ulcers, and maybe we can get off the Lialda, although that's like a maintenance med, so they probably won't actually take him off of that ever. But where he is right now is there are no like behavior problems anymore. There's no sleeping problems. There's no problems using the bathroom. He's much more engaged, and he's, at one point it was like just trying to survive day to day. Like, I realize now that probably all his behaviors were pain, and, his acting out, or like literally ramming his head into the wall, or like randomly hitting someone on the street and then have to run away from the police, which actually happened, was because the kid was in pain, and could not communicate that. And the frustration must be unbelievable, right? But that's all in the past now, because we got lucky, because, he almost died. We got lucky because we almost died, and that helped find one of the pieces.
And the SCD diet, for those that don't know, means a specific carbohydrate diet.
Yeah.
There's a book by Elaine Gottschalk called Breaking the Vicious Cycle.
That's right. That's the Bible to follow. Yeah. And basically, they shouldn't even call it specific carbohydrate. They should just call it no carbohydrate, because you're not getting any carbohydrates, So, you can eat all kinds of meats. Obviously you want to be organic, free range, make everything at home type of thing. But you're basically talking about, meats, fruits, and vegetables.
And there's different levels too. Like they have a pre-level, level 1, level. There's different stages, I should say.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah, like there's a whole yoga now. Like when Elaine wrote this book for her son, and she was able to cure him of ulcerative colitis. She wasn't talking anything about autism, but obviously we know a lot, if not most of our kids have GI issues. So it kind of makes sense to heal up the gut. And she was able to, again, heal her son's severe ulcerative colitis. The thing is, she followed the diet. When you read the book, she followed it for, probably close to a decade. So, you can't really have cheats. You know what I mean? Like
I always joke, it's not like Weight Watchers where you're like, okay, I'm going to just like save up my points.
Yeah.
Eat whatever I want on the weekend.
Yeah. I've been really good, and now I can have like a little bit of I can't do that. It's more like it's more akin to like the peanut allergy. I would like to have some peanut butter, but you know what? If I eat some peanut butter, I might die.
Exactly.
So that's what, you won't die here, but I mean, it
will set you back, and you will definitely.
Yeah. You're not, so if anyone's tried the diet and they've done it for 6 months, that's not really actually doing the diet. It's kind of like a hard pill to swallow, because in a way it's tough, but once you're doing it for a while, then it becomes easy, and now it's easy actually now. It's easy actually now to do it. I mean, and it also takes a while to learn how to do, I think, these diets, because even when you read the book and then you try to read the labels on products, and first of all, if it has a label, you probably shouldn't be using it, but you try to read the labels, and you try to buy the right stuff. it's still, you're always, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, like, I'm like, yeah, I got this whole diet down. And I find something in the diet that I need to get rid of. I'm like, I'm like, oh, there was something else in there. And that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's,
Mhm.
2 steps forward, 1 step back. I mean, nothing's going to be perfect, right? As long as you continue to make little positive changes, every day, every year. Then when, like I said, when we first started talking, when you look back, I can look back now and see all the progress Alex has made. And to do that, I usually do, again, like I mentioned, I worked on Wall Street. So I have a spreadsheet. I have spreadsheets for everything. So Alex has his own spreadsheet, and on his spreadsheet, it has, all his, all the things that he takes during the day, like whether it's, supplements or medications. And I have it going back 10 years now. And then I also have, what the weather was like at one point. I'm not keeping as much now because now he's not really, he used to be really sensitive to temperature and pollen count. Again, when his gut's been healed, now that's not really a problem anymore. But I used to track all those things, and whether he was in school, who he was working with that day, what we did, how many hours he slept. And then I would have like a subjective scale below the spreadsheet. So if, at the top there are rows with all the inputs basically, which is again, the diet, medication, schooling and such. And below would be my rating each day of, what were the bowel movements like, what was the sleep like, anxiety, behavior, all these other things. And some of these things change over the time, but I have like 10 years of this information now. And I call the outputs below my subjective ratings are kind of color coded, like green, yellow, and red. When you put a number into the cell, it turns the cell a certain color. So I can look back real quick. I'm like, oh, Alex is having a problem. I can scroll back, and if I see some like yellow and red, I'm like, what was going on here? And then I'll look. I'm like, oh, it was the summer, and that was back when he was sensitive to temperature. It was probably humid that time of year or something like that. Or we were doing this kind of diet then, or we were still eating pineapple then. Turns out pineapple bothers him sometimes because there's a lot of acid in the pineapple. So you probably shouldn't take pineapple if you have like acid reflux, which is a side effect of a lot of GI issues. So anyway, but I'm able to look at that now and see, and whenever I show people the spreadsheet, it's always like, wow, it looks like really impressive. But really, it's just one column. It's just one column over 10 years, and you just fill it out every day. And literally it takes like 10 seconds to fill the thing out. And then you have all this data to help you make decisions, and also to make you feel better that you're making some sort of progress here, because that's kind of part of the story too, because not every day is going to be a great day. But if you keep like working on it, and then you're able to have some sort of mechanism to look back in time, you can, and then when you see progress, then you have hope.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
to me, it sounds like to me though, you actually have hope with the tools and an actual real plan, and you're constantly tweaking that plan like many of us.
That's right. Yeah.
Now I want to talk about the Big Daddy movie. Okay.
Okay.
What is that? Like, I'm excited to hear. I've heard some about it, a little bit, but
Yeah.
I know there's a lot more to it. So can you give us a little bit of
Sure.
on that?
Sure. Well, I could tell. So what that was is, I'll give the background for a little bit, if that's okay. So a friend of mine and I, who we both worked on Wall Street together, but we didn't really take it seriously because we were, at the same time, we were like, this is kind of a joke. I mean, this is, so we had sort of the same mindset, and we had written a TV show together. It never went anywhere, but a couple people looked at it. So anyway, years later, we had reconnected. She's since married and like living in London. She was, and she kind of got caught up on my story, sort of like what we're talking about, single dad stuff. She's like, you should write a blog or do a reality TV show. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So she actually contacted some people, and then we had some phone calls with some people because they were interested. But I don't really watch TV that much, except for like the Marvel stuff. It's kind of like a 80s. When I was a kid in the 80s, I was like kind of like a comic geek. But outside of that, I've never really watched a reality TV show. But I've heard that there's a lot, it's kind of focused on a lot of drama, right? So, which probably means negativity. So the folks that we talked to, the producers that we talked to, they wanted to focus on the like how bad things are, how challenging things are. And that's okay to talk about that too. But there was nothing about, they didn't want to talk about anything that was good. In fact, they wanted to focus on the fact that I hadn't had a date in like 8 years. And that one of the guys had an idea for a show called literally Undateable, which would just be about people who were like undateable. Cause the idea was like, this is a single kid with this, with like, they wanted to set me up on dates and we'd be talking and like maybe hopefully having a good time with someone. And then I'm supposed to spring on them that I have like I'm a single dad. My kid has autism and I have no money, and then see what happens. Like I'm like, that's a show. Like, well, you got to be kidding me.
Like, do I get paid for that?
That was the one thing, right? So I didn't want to do that because I don't want to broadcast like a negative,
absolutely
negative message. And so at the same time, another friend of mine who's on like the NAA board with me, she said, why don't you talk to Aaron? So Aaron was a fellow who he worked on Autism the Musical. He's from Southern California, went to like UCLA film school. And he has this theater group for kids on the spectrum in New York. Like they're on the Night of Too Many Stars every year. Like they're doing really good things. And at one point he was like the theater teacher at this private school that Alex was going to in the city. So I contacted Aaron. And I told him, what was going on. He's like, oh, maybe we can make a documentary. So I'm like, okay, that's good. And originally they were going to do, a whole bunch of different families, but I guess it's just so fascinating, apparently, that there's a single dad with a son with autism. And I think it's like the arc of the story, the fact that like I used to be out every night of the week and I worked on Wall Street and all this other stuff. And now I can't go to Starbucks and I'm cleaning poop off the floor and I haven't had a date in 8 years. Apparently that's interesting to some people. But anyway, he said, let's start filming. So we started filming and now it's almost like 4 years ago now. And so now the thing is in post-production. The working title, it's going to be a different title, but the working title was Big Daddy Autism, which was my idea to take off on the Adam Sandler film, Big Daddy. I thought that was good. I was even going to have a scene where Alex and I go to this restaurant, Felix, and pee on the wall, which is the same restaurant they pee on the wall in downtown. I wanted to do that, but they wouldn't let me do it. So now it's in like post-production. I think they're done filming. They're doing like some editing and now I don't know all the movie terminology, but like some company signed on with the film and they are redoing a trailer. It's like the second trailer. It's like the Avengers. There's like multiple trailers to this thing. And they're bringing the trailer to like Netflix and Amazon Prime. And the idea is to get one of them interested in it and also to place it ideally in obviously Sundance and Tribeca. That would be kind of cool. I would like to go there. Well, I'd like to go to Utah at least, and I'm already here at Tribeca. So that's kind of that's where it is at. So I think that we may actually be out somewhere next year. So we got invited to do a whole bunch of film festivals, and that's great. And we're going to try to do that. I actually have like a dream of having like a Big Daddy van and like touring like for next summer, cruising around because actually next summer, Alex will be graduating from school next summer. So if the film actually came out like 1 year from now in like February and April for the two big film festivals, we could spend next summer, like, touring like, like a rock band.
That's so cool. Well, I will definitely keep us posted. And I'm sure now everyone watching, just make sure there is your link in this bio, so I'm sure you'll be posting it on your website.
Yeah. And I think you can just look up. It's still called Big Daddy Autism. I think like Aaron was saying, like they don't want to have autism in the title because they don't want to. They want it to be a feature film, and they don't want to pigeonhole it. Like you don't want to kind of limit the audience. They want it to be more of a relationship story. And it just happens that autism is part of it. So that's why it won't be Big Daddy Autism. Big Daddy's already taken, Infinity War's already taken. So I think like right now, I think like the new title, I don't think it's going to be this because I don't like it, but not that I have any say, is like Ken and Alex. I mean, that seems kind of boring to me. I'm hopeful that there's some line that's spoken in the film or something that happens in the film that can encapsulate the idea behind it, and that'll be the title rather than Ken and Alex.
Well, I think whatever it's called, I think it's going to be wonderful, and I'm looking forward to seeing it myself. And now connecting to the community.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about trying to connect to me, obviously, you know, even this movie is going to do amazingly well to connect to the community. But what are some other things that you can give some tips on how to connect to the community?
Yeah, you know, that's actually a really big thing I think that parents should do, because especially, you know, single parents or even parents that, all the parents should try to get involved in the community as much as they're able, because now in New York or in like California, it's kind of easy because we have a lot of organizations here, and it's easier to make connections, I think, here than if you live maybe in the Midwest, because you have just longer distances to go to meet up with people, and maybe you don't have a local chapter of NAA or TALKA or, you know, someone else there to kind of connect. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. But I always give myself an example. So once I had Alex come and live with me, Alex was going to this private school and they had a parent group. So I started showing up the parent group. Sometimes I was the only one there, but other times there were usually some other parents there. And most of those folks are still friends of mine right now. At one particular group, I was talking a lot, like I tend to do. And this one other dad was like, you know, you should write a book. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to write a book. And he's like, I'm a publisher. So then I got a book. So kind of putting yourself out there will help, and also make a lot of connections for you, because, you know, I come back to the Navy SEAL analogy. You know, Navy SEALs fight as a team. So you can't really do this on your own. You can't do this like the typical way a guy would be like, I'm going to grunt through and I'm going to put it on my back and carry it across like the finish line. That doesn't work. You need like a whole team behind you. And especially if you're a single parent, and even if you're not, you still need other people involved. And maybe it could be other family members, but if not, you can find other parents who are going through the same situation as you, and you will connect with them really, really quick. And you'll share ideas. Maybe you'll share sitters, maybe you'll share doctors or other strategies that will help. And also, you know, going to the conferences I found really helpful, because you get a real sense of community talking with the folks. You know, so in September last year, we went to the Autism Education Summit in Dallas. I hadn't been to a conference in like a few years, and it was the first time Alex flew on a plane. He was 19, his first plane flight ever, and it went like amazingly well. But one thing, when we were at the conference, and I have a girlfriend now, actually. So my girlfriend was there and her daughter's on the spectrum. We were there, and the kids, in particular, my girlfriend's daughter, who's verbal, still talks about, she's like, she wants to go to hotels. She wants to go to a hotel, go to the ball pit, because like the area of the conference outside of the, where the speakers was sort of like a gathering point, and you were comfortable. Like if Alex was running up and down the hall, I would let Alex run and use the restroom himself and come back. That doesn't usually happen. Mm-hmm. Not that he can't do it, but I would be concerned about something. There I wasn't. So you're with your people there.
I remember seeing you guys there. Yeah. And I remember seeing Alex, I remember going up the escalator, and Alex was down the escalator, and you were at the top, and I'm like, wait, Alex is there, you're like, it's good. I'm like, cool. And I get it though, because I knew who Alex was, and if I didn't, many others did as well. So it's almost like you have all these eyeballs on your child, and you don't have to stress as much. So I totally, I totally get that. So,
it's real. Yeah. Just, it's so to kind of get yourself in the community, however that is, whether maybe it's online and joining like some sort of online group, but if you're in an area where there's like an organization, like, I joined in that same parent group I talked to. One of my other friends was in there, and eventually I got invited to give a couple speaking gigs for NAA, and then they asked me to be on that board, and that led to other connections. With the first book I did that you wrote a chapter for, Kristen, I wound up connecting with a lot of people in the community. Basically what I did was I asked a whole bunch of other people to write the book, and I just kind of wrote something at the beginning, and I got my name on it, and that was it. But there were 70 chapters in that book. So I made connections with 70 plus people that are top people that you want to know. if I have a question about autism, I have like a whole boatload of people I can go to right now.
Yeah.
So putting yourself out there helps. And you know what? It helps other parents too, because they see you doing it, and then they're going to say, oh, it's okay, I can do it. And hopefully as a dad, other dads are saying, hey, you know what? I can actually do that too. I gave a talk 2 weeks ago now on self-direction, which is like this Medicaid service program in New York. It's kind of like what I'm doing as a job now. But one dad came up to me afterwards. He's a single dad. He just took custody of his daughter. He lives in New Jersey. He's in the process of moving to New York because he can get better services. And he's like, can I just talk to you and like hang out with you like once in a while? I'm like, yeah, okay.
I love that.
So
you wouldn't have had that connection if you weren't getting outside the box, going out there. And it is hard, I think, even, I mean, I can't speak at being a dad, but even as a mom, sometimes, you know, it is hard to get out there and be vulnerable. And I imagine this is the same for the dad, maybe even more so, because men usually don't like to show their vulnerability, you know?
That's right.
And so, you know, I think sometimes it's just difficult to say, yeah, my child has autism. But I've noticed the more I talk about it, and this is crazy, like even let's say I'll be on a phone call for customer service or something, right? And they'll ask me for my email, and my email has the word autism in it, right? And they'll say, they'll get, my son has autism, or my grandchild has autism. And I'm not kidding, this happens to me. And I always think, like, is the universe just giving me the people that answer the phone? I actually think there's just a lot more autism now, but it's just so fascinating to me, because it's like that brings up a conversation, and then it's kind of like you said, it's like, okay, we're each other's peeps, right? So then they actually treat me way better too. It's like all of a sudden, like, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of that. Oh, shipping, don't worry about that. It's free shipping all of a sudden, you know? Whatever it is, it's kind of like this like amazing community where you don't even have to know each other, but you know each other.
That's totally right. Yeah, I mean, it's actually like, you know, that's one of the positives that you get. You know, you get, you know, everything in the universe kind of balances out. I mean, it may not look like it at certain points in time, but, you know, maybe, anyway, you know, so we have autism, but you get to meet like the most amazing people if you put yourself out there, because anyone who's survived, you know, autism and hopefully thrived with it, not everyone can do that. Those are people you want to know.
Absolutely.
Because there's something to them. And if there's not something to them initially, like something happened to them that made them able to take this on, you know, something helped them to become part of the SEALs, you know?
Absolutely. And I think now too, and because my son's going to be 16, and I feel like 14 years ago when this happened to us, when we got this diagnosis, there wasn't Facebook. We had Yahoo groups. But I think now that we have the social media outlets that we do today, I really feel like you can go on at 2 o'clock in the morning and somebody's talking about something, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like you're not so alone in the way that because Yahoo groups were great, but it was just like a long thread, you know?
Yeah.
You had to look at different subjects, which again was great. It was like the beginning of social media, really.
Yeah.
And now I feel like, you know, a lot of parents can't go to conferences. They're expensive. You know, we love having summits like this because even doing the face-to-face this year was so that way that people felt like they were just sitting here with us talking, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, but I do feel like, you know, I love that you're really encouraging those to connect with the community, because I feel like, and especially dads, I really think dads, and you can speak better to this than I can, but it always seems like there's way less dads in a room when it comes to an autism event than whether it be a support group or a lecture. Like, I'm not kidding. There could be 50 people and it feels like 3 are dads if we're lucky, right?
I know. No, that's definitely the case. There's, and what I usually say is, especially if it's single dads, or like dads who, again, there's probably not a lot that have custody, but, you know, like this guy in New Jersey, like I was telling him to go to a conference. He's like, yeah, you know, I get out there and stuff like that. I'm like, go to conference. You'll be the only guy in the conference. Or like, it's like taking a yoga class. You go to yoga class, there's like 3 guys and like 20 women. I'm like, what else do you want? You
and
know?
they all take care of you. They're like,
that's right. Yeah. And
like, oh my gosh, I love it. Now,
but I was just gonna say real quick, Kristen, I went, like, when the film was out, like maybe it's probably 2 years ago now, I got invited to go to this dad's group in New York. And it wasn't just like an autism, it was like a special needs dad group that was like derived somehow from the Board of Ed in New York and like parent associations. It was only dads, no women were allowed, and we had sandwiches and all this kind of stuff like that. So basically we showed the trailer, and then I took like some questions. So I thought it was going to be like 5 minutes or something like that. So I used up the entire time there. And like at the end, like I was like, I couldn't get out of there. Aaron, the director, was there. He left. I'm like, you know, I need like security or something like that to get out of here, which was great or something like, but all these big guys are like hugging me. I'm like, yeah, I love you too, man. So it is possible. In that particular case, it was, you know, maybe because it was an all guy venue, maybe that helped break it down a little bit. Or maybe they had been experienced enough that they were willing to go to this thing. But I did make some really nice connections in, you know, back in Dallas again, with some of the dads there. And I, you know, and a lot of dads did come up and talk to me afterwards. So hopefully that they'll, you know, keep spreading the message, because, you know, I'm just trying to, you know, the kids need both parents. You know, in some cases they may not have the other option, right? But if possible, if both parents can be involved and help, even if you're still not together, it's going to benefit, you know, the kid, and make because they got the challenges too. You know what I mean? Like we have challenges too, but they have challenges too. Like I talked about Alex, like, you know, not, you know, punching like old women on the street, literally in New York, and running from the police because he was not feeling well. Like that's how bad, you know, he's like, you know, if he could talk, he's like, this is what I got going on. Okay. You know, your thing's probably not so bad. So, you know, having both parents having their back, you got to figure
it's always better to have a team. And if you are a single parent, create that team, you know, create that community and really create that village.
That's right.
Now you talk a little bit about some of the challenges and the transformation. How do you embrace, you know, I feel like with autism, there's always another challenge. There's always, you know, even then when you do a transformation and you're like, okay, I think we finally got it, you know, and it's like, oh wait, we don't really have it. It's like 2 steps forward, as you said. Sometimes it's even 3 steps back, you know? So how do you embrace that challenge and that transformation?
You know, for me, in some ways, and I don't want to say this because I don't want to discourage anyone, but it may have been that I had like a positive mindset to begin with, right? But what I would say would be, you know, I love this one quote, and there's various people who have said it, so I'm not going to take credit for it, but so many people have said it, you can't really give a proper attribution to it, but it's like, you know, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Because, you know, what else are you going to do? Are you ready to punch your ticket already? No, you got responsibilities, you got stuff to do. And you don't know what's going to happen that 8th time you get up, that might be it. So one thing I've been doing lately has been rereading. So there's one of the kids with nonverbal autism. He's a kid who lives in Japan, Naoki Higashika. I'm probably mispronouncing his last name, but he's written a couple books. One of them was The Reason I Jump, which people may have heard of. And his second book was the quote I just gave, which was, you know, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And I found he writes like really succinct little, almost like sutras, like you're reading like a Hindu verse or something like that, like little suggestions. But it's given me at least an insight into like a nonverbal mind. And by reading that, it helps me be centered and a little bit more attuned to Alex's moods, and helps me understand him a little bit more. And that's kind of given me a little bit more motivation to not get frustrated on a day-to-day basis. That's one thing with the behaviors. Then the other challenge is that you're always looking for something. And like I said, it took, you know, Alex was 9 when he came to live with me. So maybe 5 years before he got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And during that 5-year period, there were some really difficult times. I mean, we live in another building right now that I got evicted from. You know, I had neighbors who would call the police because there was so much noise going on. And like, I can't tell you how many times police came to the door and I had to sign paper that like, yeah, I'm not a child abuser, you know.
Oh
Luckily
my.
the police were pretty cool when they came in and they all had like training.
Mhm.
You know, and they actually like apologized, but I'm like, they're like, you know, we have to, someone called it in, we have to fill out like a report. So, you know, that might not be that an uplifting a message here, but that being said, you know, going through all that stuff, eventually we found out that ulcerative colitis was one of Alex's pieces. And, you know, he's still not verbal. He has some vocalizations, actually has a lot of vocalizations, but he has some approximations that might be accurate, but he can use like an iPad and communicate with that stuff. And he gets his point across. And now you can see that he has really good receptive skills now that he's not in like pain and agony, almost on a daily basis. So, I'm just trying to think of like how, I don't know if there's a way to actually instill a positive mindset in someone other than, you know, I don't think you're born with a positive mindset. It must be, and I'm just thinking of this now, obviously, because I'm saying it must be something like what you expose yourself to, whether it's what you read or watch, or maybe even who you associate with. So if you have people who are, you know, negative, or if you even, you know, if you watch shows that are negative, like, I don't want to put anyone off their favorite TV shows, but if you're watching like a lot of shows that have a lot of like negative drama, like maybe reality shows or something like that, you know, maybe that's not the best thing to watch if you have like a challenging life, you know, situation. And, you know, and if people are like always dinging a therapy or something you want to try, maybe you don't want to spend so much time communicating with those folks. And I'm all for like, I'm loving reading like science fiction right now. Like that's my favorite thing. Like a lot of the classic science fiction, but I also intersperse it with some readings on autism. I mentioned like the Higashika books that I read that I find helpful. So I think it's kind of like putting yourself out there, like as a parent and connecting with others. I think you have to put yourself in a positive mindset by doing positive things, like reading positive things. Not that you have to pretend everything's, you know, roses and sunshine or whatever. But at least don't make it negative, you know, at least don't make it negative.
Yeah, I think,
I
like,
also found that Chris, like, I also found like, that, I have like a pretty evolved now, like fitness regimen. And I think that has helped me like feel better over time. Like I mentioned like yoga before and like some meditation. I think that stuff actually helps. There's a reason why it's 5,000 years old. I also do other things too. I think any physical activity is going to raise, you know, physical activity helps your endorphins. Endorphins make you feel better, right? And some of the things that have been around for a while, like I said, yoga and meditation, thousands of years old, still doing it. Take a shot.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, I think it's like you said, like you basically you create the world that you want to be in, you know?
that's right. That's
And
right.
I think that often, you know, when something's negative or it's draining, you just kind of have to cut that off. Like, and
Yep.
so you're painting this picture, and every day you're saying, okay, this is working, this is working. But I mean, I think that's like with anybody. If you're ever around anybody that's negative, all they're going to do
Yeah.
is bring you down. So I
Yeah.
love that advice. And we talked a little bit. We have a little bit of time left. We talked a little bit about what was worked for Alex. I know you mentioned the specific carbohydrate diet.
Yep.
You actually mentioned some biomedical treatments
Yeah.
as well, and therapies. Is there something that one thing that stands out in your mind, or is it more of a kind of combination?
I mean, it's for all the kids, it might be some sort of combination, you know, like everyone has to find their whole thing. It's really tough. Like, you know, there are a whole bunch of books about kids that have like recovered or improved enough that they've like recovered. And none of them, you know, none of them are the same. And so many people have followed the same path. And, you know, if one of the things was going to be the silver bullet, everyone, there would, you know, it would be gone. Like everyone's kid would be like fully recovered or whatever. But, that's not the case. So you kind of have to find your own thing. But that being said, you know, the GI connection, the gut brain connection is real. And it probably makes sense to start there, you know, to start with a dietary thing, or even if you've done it before, maybe you didn't really do it enough, or maybe you didn't do it seriously enough. And maybe it makes sense to go back and do it, because there's no downside to doing it. You know what I mean? There's no downside to eating healthier, right? Like it's not bad. It's not a bad thing to eat healthier, right? And obviously the whole family should do it, but that's one thing. Alex has been helped with by melatonin. At night, that's helped, like a slow release melatonin, because if it's not slow release, it kind of knocks you out, but then you might wake up in the middle of the night. So slow release obviously releases slowly, expanding like the time that the melatonin is active in your system. That may help. I think keeping the kids like active, I think is helpful. I think it's helpful for like having a bowel movement to be like active, even if you're just going for a lot of walks. I think that, he takes a probiotic right now. That probably makes sense with the GI tract thing. I talked about like Alex's regression a little bit. One of the things was when he was really young, he had a lot of like inhaled antibiotics that he was taking for ear infections. I think that that's what threw off his gut, and then maybe something else happened and, led to the ulcerative colitis / autism. So probiotic, if there's GI issues, that might be something for folks to investigate. In the literature, there's a lot of books by some excellent doctors that work with kids in our community. I think reading through there, and then if you find something that kind of makes sense, like I have all these books by like, Dr. Baker, Dr. Bach, and amongst a whole bunch of others. And I periodically I will read through there again, and I've always taken notes. And every once in a while, like a couple of years ago, I went back and I was looking at. I don't remember what actually sparked me, but I went back and read about this one supplement. It's like an old school supplement. It's like OG supplement. It was like P5P. It was like an old thing that like was in Sidney Baker's book, and then I think it was in also Ken Bach's book. And they were some of the guys who were doing this a little bit earlier. And it helped in some cases. And I started giving it to Alex. I think that helped like a little bit, but definitely the diet and the treatment for the ulcerative colitis were really, made big changes. I also thought that now Alex takes like a hemp oil. I put it in his juice in the morning. I think that helps a lot, because even as he was starting to feel better, he would still have like some anxieties. That seemed to help a little bit. He has a lot of like sensitivity to sound, which is challenging in Manhattan. So he'll wear like noise canceling headsets, but we've also done like the listening program from like Advanced Brain. That seemed to help a lot, and he really like enjoys doing it. So we're actually on a break from that right now, but we're literally going to start it up like again next week. And I've seen when he's on the break, he gets a little bit more sensitive. He's actually deals with it pretty well right now. It doesn't set him off anymore. But now I'm going to go back to that again with the idea that maybe we can continue to lower the sensitivity. So all those things have helped. Other things that we did, we tried, and maybe it helped a little bit, but I can't say definitively. Like at one point he did like some chelation, he did like IVIG. I think that those things made sense from a standpoint that like when he tested, he had like metals in his system. I'm still trying to figure out some way of kind of addressing the speech. We've done like some RPM, although it's really difficult to implement that. I've found like as a single parent, it's tough to do that, and it's tough to get people trained to do it. So I haven't found a good answer for that. Like Chantal would be something like great to talk about, like RPM, because Jeremy does really well with that. And I know some other kids here in New York that are doing really well with that. I would like to get that, because I would like Alex to be able to communicate better with the world. I think he's fine with me. But to be able to do that, that's kind of like my big focus right now. Not necessarily RPM, but just kind of communication to begin with. And I am looking at like other sort of like natural detox things, like whether it's diet, like basically like when I cook his stuff, there's always like turmeric and like all this stuff. Like he has bacon and eggs in the morning, and in his eggs, if his one of his GI doctors, and he's got like regular GI doctors in like a clinic at New York Presbyterian, great hospital, but they're like they're not up on, it's not like you're talking with like Dr. Krigsman or someone like, who deals with our population, right? So they're like, oh, Alex's iron's a little bit low, we're going to give you a pill. I'm like, what else can we do? And he's like, well, you can give him some leafy greens. I'm like, maybe that's easier to do. So he's like, well, a lot of kids don't like leafy greens. So I cut up a little bit of spinach. It's not like Alex doesn't. I cut up a little spinach and mix it in his eggs in the morning with like turmeric, and then he eats it. And then that kind of took care of the problem.
Yeah.
Didn't need a pill. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what that is. I think we were lucky to find that ulcerative, the colitis. But again, coming back to it, so many of the kids have GI issues. I think that they should do the diet. I also think they should probably get like a full GI workup. If you see like bloating, if there's problems with going to the bathroom, if there's really selective dieting, it probably makes sense to get it checked out because it's just so prevalent. I mean, statistics I've seen, they're all over, the statistics are all over the place, but I think it's at least 60, 70%. Maybe it's much higher than that. So I would start there.
That's a great suggestion. Now, my last question for you is, what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned how Alex is 19. He's going to be 20 in June, and he's got one more year of school left, right? So
we know you want to do the Big Daddy van.
Yeah, I want to do the Big Daddy van. That's like next summer, the Big Daddy tour. It's like a concert tour or something like that. We'll have to see who's going to open for Big Daddy. Yeah, that would be great, and I would like to keep doing that. And maybe I'll write something again, like when Alex graduates school. I just started doing a little bit more speaking. That's kind of, and I mentioned this self-direction before. If you're not in New York, you may not be familiar with. Basically, you're like an independent contractor, and you help families access Medicaid services. Like in New York, the kids who are 21 and below, the state will give you, and you have a developmental disability, the state will give you $50K to spend on stuff. You don't actually get the money, but you can spend it on programs. So like for Alex, I spend it on, he has like gym memberships, swimming, personal training, art teacher comes here, piano lessons, music, transportation to different things. And when the kids are 21 and above, you get $100,000. Part of it can go towards rent and all this other stuff like that. So,
wow.
so my job is to like help families access that budget, and I get paid by the state. Like the families don't have to pay me, like it's free basically. So that's my new sort of career. So I'm trying to grow that business. I just started it last year. It's going really well because they call us brokers, but like we're support brokers. So there's not enough support brokers for all the people with developmental disability. So like literally I get emails and phone calls all day long for people, and everyone you sign up, you get business from. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now. Alex, I'm looking for a program for him for when he's out of school. There's actually a school where I mentioned Maud, my girlfriend's daughter, is going to a private school in like Spring Valley, New York. It's like 45 minutes from here. And they have like a transitions program. I'm going to try to, if they're not already taking like Medicaid dollars to pay for it, I'm going to try to talk them into it. Because the transition program is almost sort of like a day hab where like maybe he can go there for the day, and that would be sort of a school thing. And they have like a farm, and there's a restaurant they run and all that kind of stuff. I think that would be kind of cool. There's another business that was just started by a friend of mine in the city called Invictus. They actually have like a kitchen where they make dog biscuits. They make like gluten-free sweet potato dog biscuits, and they make some sort of jam for humans. And they're going to make other products, but they have like a whole bunch, all the kids everyone who works there has autism. So except for the couple parents that run it. So they have a kid who's like likes to do computers. He runs the website. Another kid is like a natural salesman. He goes around selling the stuff to like dog walking businesses, and like kennels and stuff like that in the city. And the other guys like bake the biscuits. They work on like Saturday and do that. So Alex is going to do a trial of that in a couple weeks. And then longer term, I'm working with a group of parents here in the city. I sort of put like together an informal group, like putting myself out there with this parents group and joining NAA board. I created like a happy hour. We do it like few times a year, where we all meet up at this restaurant. You've been there, the Calle Ocho. And basically I invite like folks that I know, and most of them are parents of kids on the spectrum, or that they work with our kids. And it's basically to have fun and for me to have a social life, but it also has a lot of things that have come out of that. You know, there's been a lot of connections made. Some businesses have come out of that. A whole bunch of books have come out of that. And with that group, we're talking about like building a community upstate in New York that would take advantage of these self-direction dollars, because all the kids would have $100,000. $100,000 in Manhattan is not that much money, sad to say, but upstate, that's a lot of money. So you can drive like 90 minutes from New York, still have access to New York City, still get $100,000, you know, for your kid, and live in like a pristine natural environment on the side of a mountain, and maybe have like an autism ashram. That's what I'm kind of working on.
That's awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to talk more about that, because I want to learn about what other states have that, because I've never heard of that.
It's like New York is kind of there's other states that have like a self-direction program, but like Wisconsin has one, but it's $6,000.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. New Jersey is like the second largest one, $16,000.
What is the waiting list in New York, just out of curiosity?
You know, so first you have to get the Medicaid waiver to get the program, right? You have to have a diagnosis, and then you get the waiver. Medicaid waiver is probably a year wait. And then once you have the waiver, you can begin the self-direction process from when you first start talking to a person like me until that you go to launch is when you can start spending money. Probably takes 6 months. So you're talking like as soon as you come in the door, 18 months. But a lot of people move into New York for that program. And as soon as you move in, you can start.
Well, what I love about it is the money goes to make sure it goes for the housing and the living and making sure the best quality of life. It's not just giving a check going, hope that you're going to be great.
I mean, that would be good too. I would be fine with that.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have a little bit of both, but yeah. So, but well, I've loved talking with you. I know you have a free gift for our families today. You guys, there will be it's a free download of the free parenting tips PDF. That's an ebook that you're giving to everybody. So thank you so much for that.
Of course, no, thank you.
And then again, guys, there his link is here for his website. So we make sure we follow him. We definitely all want to go out and support this Big Daddy movie, or Alex and Ken, or Ken and Alex, or whatever they're going to call it.
Ken and Alex, yeah, that's it. I'm getting the lead at least.
I think that would be wonderful. And what's your final message that you want to leave with parents that are listening today?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about it a second, because usually I say, I kind of already gave that quote: fall down 7 times, get up 8. I mean, I think that's kind of the bottom line of what I say. It's not that I'm trying to lead it to that. It's just, if you stay positive and keep working on it, things will improve. And that's what it's done for me. It's done for a whole bunch of other people that I know. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying it's possible. So just work on it a little bit day by day. Just try to be positive. It's going to happen. You're going to be thinking like, oh man, I shouldn't have yelled at Alex or something like that. I feel really bad. But as soon as you say I shouldn't have done that, then that's like kind of the first step. And then it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen again. But each time as you acknowledge it, it will slowly go away. And it's the same way as like each time you be thinking like, yeah, I stayed positive in that situation, or, hey, he's doing much better, or she's doing much better than she was last month. Maybe that diet's actually working right now. And then you get a little bit motivated to do a little bit more. So I wish I had like a really succinct line to give, but I think it's just to stay positive and keep working on it. I mean, I think that's
perfect. And I think that's real. And I think that parents appreciate that. So thank you so much, Ken, for taking the time and just helping the community the way you do. I'm always in awe of you. Every time I've seen you, every time I read about anything you're doing, I just think that you're just such a great positive role model for all of us. So thank you so much for just being
Thank you, Kristen. Thanks for having me here, and I appreciate you saying that. Thanks so much.
And to all of you guys watching, until next time. Bye, guys.